Medicine is one of the most difficult, fast-paced, yet rewarding paths you can take. You can set out on your own and navigate the student loans, the bureaucracies, and systems that define a typical medical career. Or you can apply for the U.S. Army's Health Professions Scholarship Program and launch yourself into a medical career like no other. Your tuition will be completely covered, and when you graduate med school, you'll learn from and work with some of the most elite minds in medicine. That's the Army difference. Learn more and apply today at goarmy.com/HPSP.
To Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. And I'm your host, Janet Carolessa, with my co-host, Karen Christine Patrick. And this is another episode of Experiencers Network, one of the many shows we bring you from the Aquarian Radio Network. Today we have a special guest, Russell Brinegar, and Karen will read his bio and tell our listeners a little bit about Russell. Take it away, Karen.
Yeah, hello everybody. I heard about Russell from a very famous witness to UFO realities, which is Clifford Stone, mentioned Russell's book. So I got in contact with him, and he's coming on here today. I'll read the intro I have here. Russell is a skeptic-turned-experiencer whose book, Overlords of the Singularity, was recommended by Clifford Stone, military witness of ET presence, and this is Russell's own statement. I've been an agnostic, material, reductionist most of my life, with scientific friends and associates, all skeptical of UFOs and the paranormal and psychics, etc. I'm 60 years of age. 2009 was when I had a heart attack /NDE, near-death experience. Following that experience, a friend invited me to a haunted house with fellow ghost hunters, with electronic voice phenomenon equipment, and that sparked the next several years of research into UFOs and related phenomenon, all of which I saw in the light of my NDE, a flash of insight into the interdimensional nature of reality, and it led to the completion of the Overlords book. Again, the title, Overlords of the Singularity. Probably one of the coolest titles I've heard about in recent days. And Russell, so glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, we're very delighted to have you, Russell.
Well, thanks a lot. When you mentioned Overlords, the first thing that people are going to think of is Arthur C. Clarke's reference to the Overlords in his famous novel Childhood's End, and I'd actually selected the title to this book before I even read Childhood's End. I'd kind of never read it, and then I finally read it, and out of respect for Arthur C. Clarke, I was thinking of coming up with some other name, like demigods or anything, and nothing quite fit, so I just stuck with the original title.
I love it. It's an incredible name. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? What do you want to convey to our listeners about what it means? Well, if you
don't mind, I'd like to go back to 2009 and just explain a little bit about the paradigm that I operated my life under and how that changed. Would that be okay?
That sounds like a great place to start.
Okay. It was just a normal day. I'm an occupational therapist here in a little town in Indiana. I've worked in long-term care for about 20 years, and I'd gone to work as normal that morning and was going to go home and mow my grass and then go back to work. So when I went up to my house, I got the lawnmower out and started it up, and about 15 feet into the first swath, I just felt a fatigue that I had never felt in my whole life, and I thought at first maybe I was dehydrated or something, so I went inside and turned the air conditioner on and just kind of flip-flopped on the bed. And I was really kind of in a hurry to get the yard mowed and go back to work, so like a dummy, I went back out there and pulled and started it, and as soon as I went about 10 feet again, it came over me, only about 10 times stronger. And then what happened after that was really sort of bizarre, because it was almost like I was pulled out of time, and there was no noise. The birds were chirping before, they stopped, and then I realized suddenly in my own mind what was happening. I was having a heart attack, and I was probably going. And I had a strange reaction because I've seen dogs look around, a place to do their business, so I was circling the grass to lay down and transition, to the next world. At the time, I thought that when you die, you're just dead. Your consciousness is an epiphenomena of the brain, and when the brain dies, you're gone. And as I was doing this, something even stranger happened. It was almost like I Googled the universe, the keywords Russ is dying, because several entities came very, very close to me. I can't say that I could see them physically, but I sensed their presence, and among them were some very familiar people to me, my brother, my mother, my father, a daughter I had in Hawaii, and a couple of other individuals. And it was almost like I was given a choice. We're here for you. If you want to transition at this point, you can. We'll welcome you over to the other side. And that was very tempting. But something came over me that how cool it would be now that I know that, life does continue in some fashion and that there is a reality after this world, to go ahead and stay here a little bit longer with this new information, So I went into the house and got my keys, and I drove myself, which I shouldn't have done, to the hospital. And I was totally confident that I wouldn't die on the way to the hospital because, I just had this experience and assured, and that I had a choice in the matter. So I went right into the hospital and handed the guy the keys and said, "Would you park my car? I'm having a heart attack." So they wheeled me in. Then next thing you know, I hear morphine and everything. And they weren't really set up at the little hospital here to deal with heart attacks, so I was shipped up to Ball. And on the way up there, the EMTs were looking at the monitor, and they really had a worried expression on their face, and it struck me as humorous that they were worried about it, but I wasn't. I was certain that I was going to make it through this because I made my choice, And so I tried to lighten him up by telling him about a bee sting I got on my foot in the campground the previous day, and I remember him saying he'll think bee sting when he gets to the cath lab, and I didn't really know what he meant, but I found out because when I went into Ball, the doctors were all scrubbed up, and they said there's two ways we can go. We can give you a bypass or 2 stents. I took the stents. They went in fine. I watched it on the monitor, and the rest is history on that. But it was really interesting coming very, very close. I know that I came very close that day to crossing over, and I know that there's intelligence on the other side of that veil. And I didn't really know what to do with that information, so I just kind of stewed on it for a while. And then I got a call in October of 2012 by a friend of mine that I knew was kind of a amateur ghost hunter. And he asked me if I wanted to go to a bona fide haunted house, to check that whole thing out. And my mind said, no, I'll be wasting my time. I'd rather watch paint dry. And what blurted out was, sure, I'd love to go. I couldn't even really believe that I said that,
That's interesting. What made you think that watching paint dry people are interesting in a haunted house? Anyway, that's interesting. Okay.
But it was a really fascinating evening, and the whole time when I'm watching them with the EVP equipment, I was questioning. It was kind of humorous to me because with a scientific background, I was thinking some guy in an engineering lab was making random word generators, and these people were applying the words that they heard, to strain and find, some meaning to it. But later on in my research, I realized, through the writings of John Keel, who believes that there's entities in the superspectrum that he equates to intelligent lightning, and they have the ability to manipulate our electronic instrumentation, as evidenced by some of the nuclear shutdowns and so forth, that I kind of took a different look on it, that maybe they can communicate through electronic devices like that. So I just became much more open-minded to that sort of thing, and maybe I didn't know so much after all,
So you went to one of these, what do you call it? What do they call those? Anyway, where they have the voice come through. They create the array and then the voices come through from the other side. What happened at yours? Were you at one? Did you go to many? What happened?
No, that was the only one that I ever did. I didn't pursue the ghost hunting because I kind of felt like it was going out looking for a lightning strike. The ghost apparitions, whatever they are, whether they're disincarnate humans or whatever, they do appear to people, and we don't exactly know what their nature is. To go out and actually seek them, I'm not really sure that that's the route that I wanted to go. So I just immersed myself in books, really, and I've acquired quite a library. I'm in my study now, and I'm probably looking at about 300 books that I've read since then, and it's all UFO related and paranormal related and cryptids and all kinds of stuff, and it really opened up a door for me, and I'm really happy that I stepped through it because life's a lot more interesting now.
Better than watching paint dry. I love it. Karen, do you have a question? This is great. I love your story so far. Karen, what do you? Questions?
Oh gosh, yeah. 2009 was a big year for me too. That was when I started doing automatic writing, and I got a tremendous amount of material from that. And the electronic voice, they even have like apps now that you can get on your phone to do ghost detecting. Yeah, and it'll even randomly spit out a word. And some friends of mine, we were all sitting in a marina actually, and we started getting war, bombs, something like Carrie. We're like, what the heck? And then like we researched the history of the area, and of course we were in a area where in World War II was utilized for shipping out stuff for the war effort. So it was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And I'm a painter, so I watch paint dry all the time, and trust me, those ghost stuff is way more interesting. So that's great.
Yeah, it's called Ghost Radar. I actually had that on my iPhone in my haunted house experience.
Oh,
and,
wow, how'd it work out?
Well, it was very uncanny, but the rational side of my mind is saying we're searching our mind for some meaning in this thing,
Yeah.
This could just be a random word generator, and it's us, that are searching for the meaning in this. And then, like I said, about 2 years after the fact, looking back on that, I'd probably see it in a little bit of a different light because some of the words that popped up were just very uncanny, and it's like beyond coincidence. And so I thought to myself, I was either engaging in this process where I'm trying to seek for meaning, or this is really weird.
Right.
So the ghost radars are fun to play with on the iPhone. They can, you fire them up and it shows you where, the ghosts are in proximity, and then a word will pop up, and maybe it'll mean something to you, maybe it'll not, but it's fun to experiment with.
I think what people don't realize is the earliest, for instance, Alexander Graham Bell and Edison actually had an intention of trying to talk to the other side with their various, inventions that they were doing. And what my research partner and I have discovered is that our earliest pointing of devices into space, which was one experiment was in the 20s with radio astronomy, actually produced images on the tapes that looked like faces. Even at the time, they looked like faces. So my partner, there's only a short strip available online, and he looked at it, and he's pretty good about, he's an artist, so he's able to pick out, what was there. And, basically, when we use our devices, we're reaching into the ether sphere, and I think as time goes by, we're going to get better at this once we understand the frequencies that we're kind of looking for,
Sure.
So,
well, what was really confirming to me was the fact that some of these really super intelligent people like Nikola Tesla, made claims that he was in touch with extraterrestrials and that they provided him three-dimensional, 360-degree rotational depictions of the things that he was inventing with all the parts and pieces moving, and that's not a normal experience. And Guglielmo Marconi, another big name in electronics, he also claimed to be in touch with extraterrestrials, and Uri Geller claimed to be in touch with a computer, an advanced alien artificial intelligence named Spectre. So there are intelligences in this realm of intelligent lightning in the superspectrum, in the ether sphere, as you call it, that we do have the ability to communicate. And this brings up a lot of apprehension for some people, because there's some biblical admonitions about, talking to familiar spirits and all that. But you just,
Well, that makes you wonder. They didn't want us to do it. When I was a kid, I'd go, they don't want us to do it. I'm going to, that's a good thing. But now it's like, oh, they didn't want us to do it. That means there's some kind of truth that's being hidden.
Yeah, in fact, I was just reading a book today by Nancy Dutertre called How to Talk to an Alien, and she talks about an electrical engineer, or a physicist, actually, Jack Sarfati. He's still alive. I believe he's 76 years old. But at the age of 14.
He's on Facebook.
Oh, is he? Okay, well, I'll have to befriend him.
Look him up. Yeah, he put some of his papers
I'm amazed
out.
at the access that you have to some of these folks that, you wouldn't think that you could communicate directly with. Facebook's a wonderful thing. That's how I, got in touch with Clifford initially, and Robert Salas that ran Maelstrom Air Force facility, when he had the nuclear shutdown by the UFOs outside in 1965. I read his book, Unidentified, and that's kind of fascinating because there's more than one. That's not just an isolated incident. In 1965, when he was having his, there was one going on in the Soviet Union at the same time. I didn't know that. So there's quite a few of the shutdown situations that have happened in association with UFO appearances.
Oh, yeah. Who's the guy that wrote UFO and Nukes? Robert Hastings. Am I getting that right? They're actually going to make a book a movie based on his book. I got to hear him speak on his topic, UFO and Nukes, and we even had just a few years ago where something like 50 ICBM missiles went offline, and they're independent. They're not like a grid or anything. They're all independent systems, and they were all shut down. So it's kind of like they're telling us, hey, kiddies, stop playing with the matches, with the nuclear thing, right? But, yeah,
Karen,
I'll ask you.
Karen, I want to encourage you to slow down when you're talking because I'm not sure, but it's sounding kind of warbly on my end. How's it sounding for you?
Oh,
so if you slow down a little bit and you're speaking, I think, and enunciate it, then I know you're excited. I think we can hear better. All right.
Okay.
Have you ever read about Telly Savalas's experience?
No, go ahead.
Well, I believe it was in 1957. It was right before he was going on the Twilight Zone. He ran out of gas in his car, and a guy in a black Cadillac pulled up, and he was a little apprehensive to get inside because the guy looked a little creepy. Didn't say very much, and guy wound up giving Telly $1 because he didn't have his wallet with him or anything, and he wanted to repay him. So the guy scratched his phone number down, and when Telly called, he got a hold of Mrs. Aganis, and she said that her husband Harry had been deceased for like 3 years. So he looked her up, and I sort of thought that was an anomalous sort of thing until I read Whitley Strieber's new book, Supernatural, with Dr. Jeffrey Kripal. And apparently that's a very common experience where people interact with somebody and then later on they find out that they had actually been deceased for a while. It's called the Peak-and-Darien experience.
Can I ask a question about your conversation with Clifford Stone? Because that's how I, heard about your book and then described your book.
Okay. Well, when I first connected with Clifford on Facebook, he mentioned that he had a CD that he was selling for $20 that had a lot of documentation from NSA and different places verifying the reality of UFOs. And at the time, a couple of years ago, I was still in the question phase, is this real or is it a figment of people's imagination? So I got one from him and wound up calling him because on the CD his phone number was on there, and I called him and we had a wonderful conversation that lasted about 3 hours right here at my house, and I was just amazed at the ease of which we were speaking with one another. I felt like I was very connected with him. I just wanted to get on the airplane and fly to Roswell and meet this guy, and just because I felt like we could just talk for days on end about things. And he relates in his YouTube videos, and in his radio interviews about his experience, when his son passed away, that his little alien friend Corona took him into the realm where he could meet his son one more time, after he passed away. And I totally believe that, that's a factual thing that happened. There's a book, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called the Urantia book. You ever hear of that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's whatever you make of the material in there, if you read it, 2,097 pages, it will really open your mind up to the cosmology that it portrays. Dr. Jacques Vallée, kind of had a sarcastic take on that book. He said it's like bad science fiction, but I really got a lot out of the book. It spoke to me, and it talks of the Morantia realm, which is the precursor to the spiritual realms. And a lot of the ufonaut encounters that people where, flying saucer lands and a ufonaut gets out of it, they tell them in conversation that they are from the realm that's the precursor to the spiritual realm. Are you familiar with the friendship group or the W56 group in Italy in 1956?
Yeah.
Stefan
Yeah,
Brescia?
a little bit.
Well, a lot of the humanoid aliens that they interacted with revealed that they were they were the precursor to the spiritual realm. So it makes me wonder, just like the Urantia book depicts the resurrection of Jesus, that he came back in his Morantia body, where the people that knew him could recognize him, if some of these ufonauts are not from the same realm or even connected to the discarnate realm of humanity in general. Who knows? Maybe when people travel throughout the universe, they make contact with the discarnate population before they intersect in three-dimensional reality, so.
Well, Robert Monroe from the Monroe Institute wrote a series of books about his astral traveling, and he encountered all kinds of beings from the different realms, and he was trying to catalog it and figure it out. And then, we have historical figures like Thoth, who wrote the Emerald Tablets, Thoth or Thoth, and he talks about going through the cosmos, and he said, beware of the hounds in the interdimensions and flying past planets, and as he was out there in the cosmos in his, I guess it's his astral or spiritual form, he was able to go to the highest dimensions and see into the worlds and what they were doing and how they were conducting their lives. So we have all these accounts and that goes on and on and on, all these accounts of what people encounter when they are out of their bodies and doing this type of travel and the different types of beings. And then I myself am an experiencer contactee, and I've just seen all types of beings. And because I didn't have a way to catalog it or figure it out as a child, I called everything ghosts. And then later on, when the UFO phenomena started, it's like, well, some of those, thinking back, had to be extraterrestrials, or were they interdimensionals? What level or dimension are they from? When you look at your cosmology. So, yeah,
right.
That was just my two comments. Yeah.
But how the book came to be was I started out. I naively thought that I was going to document every UFO encounter that's ever been written since 1947. And the more I wrote down, the more it receded from me. You could write a 1,000-page book on 1954 alone. There was like 1,000 flying saucer landings and UFO encounters just alone in 1954 in France. And so many that French researcher Dr. Amy Michel plotted them all on a map and found out there was patterns to it. He came up with the concept of orthoteny, where in the center of the star pattern there would be a cigar-shaped craft, and then all the reports that he plotted on the map would go out in straight lines, from the center where the cigar craft was reported. So the fact that there's patterns to these sightings indicates that you're dealing with a real phenomena. You're not dealing with hoaxes or delusions or hallucinations or anything. The UFO phenomena does not fit into what scientists understand about hallucinosis. It's a very rare condition, and if it were hallucinosis, you would have more UFO sightings in cities where there's more people with mental disorders than you do out in the rural areas or in these window areas. I think Ivan T. Sanderson identified 10 or 12 window areas, which by coincidence form a perfect icosahedron. I think, the platonic solids throughout the universe have some key to it, sort of like a Rubik's Cube. When certain alignments are made, doors to dimensions open up. And this may be one of the methods that some of these crafts that we're seeing in the skies are coming through on. But anyway, I realized that project was not ever going to get done. So what I noticed in all the literature was that all of the researchers, I analyzed about 40 of them in one of the last chapters of the book, they're really scratching their head as to what the actual intention of the beings are. And you get so far that, you can ascertain the UFO phenomena is real. These people are seeing something. They're not lying. They're not delusions. They're actually seeing something, but what is it and what do they want? And then you get into William Bromley's material in The Gods of Eden, and he started out just wanting to find out what the underlying causes of war was, and he thought he would find mundane things like poverty and territorial acquisition, stuff like that. Well, through all his extensive research, he identified two extraterrestrial factions. One he calls the custodial race, which are the ones that just don't think too much of human beings and are willing to manipulate us. And then the maverick race, or the tutorial race, you might call them the Nordics or the Pleiadians, that actually have an interest in humanity and want us to evolve spiritually. And both of these factions have an interest in this event that Ray Kurzweil has predicted, called the Singularity. It's supposed to happen between 2045 and 2080, where a human's intelligence is going to be augmented by billions of times. And I actually believe that it's going to take that for us to see our visitors as they really are. And so the Maverick race, or the tutorial race, the friendship group, I'm sure they're still here. They're here to help us. And they'll guide us through this singularity into some form of transcendence, hopefully. But the friendship group warned us about the contraries or the weirdos, and they described them as having a conflict with them, that they were a race of biological robots that worship technology. So if you consider what William Bromley said in The Gods of Eden and all the other material out there, you're going to come to the conclusion that within the superspectrum, where there's entities that you can only describe as intelligent lightning, there are two factions. One of us has our best interests in mind. That would be like the forces and the power of good, what we call good or light. And then there's another not so good, which may be the shaitan jinn of the Islamic faith or the Christian demons that are manipulating us for their own purposes. So I think certain avatars that have come to this planet, in particular Yeshua, taught us, the way out of the matrix. Everything that's taught by these avatars is very counterintuitive, returning good for evil, turning the other cheek, not responding in a violent way towards violence. And these are like the keys to escaping this realm. That's my personal belief. And moving on into the higher celestial realms where the cosmic super beings of light exist. And that's where I want to go.
Oh, wow. That's great. I think this is a very interesting answer to what Kurzweil was saying, because there's sort of a resignation of this inevitability that comes in the Kurzweil material. Transhumanism, shrug your shoulders, that's where we're going, there's nothing we can do about it kind of thing. And not be able to retain our spiritual, organic humanity, is kind of the feeling that you get from that. And I've always wondered about that, because I don't think that is where we're going. I think humanity's potential of our DNA, our DNA is millions of years old. It's the greatest organic computer there is. And so the idea that technology is somehow going to overtake that, I don't think I've ever felt that was true. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good answer to that. And what I like what you're saying about the Matrix thing, because in 2009 when I started this automatic writing thing, a lot of material came out exactly on escaping the Matrix, and it's kind of like the monkey trap, and it's kind of like you put a treat inside a bottle, and the monkey will reach inside and grab the treat, and it will make it so he gets his hand stuck unless he lets go of it, and he won't let go, right? So that's how they would trap the monkey. It's the same thing is that we're attracted to something in the matrix that we're promised, so we grab it, and then we won't think past, letting go of that thing in order to free ourselves from the matrix. There's an attraction and a trap that we're falling for. I think part of it is not really recognizing how truly remarkable humanity is, and the rationalism strips us of our deep spiritual nature, a lot of the capacity of our mind, spirit complex to do a lot more than we give it credit for. And so I think that's kind of all tied up. And so I agree with you. I think there's this overseers who are, helping us figure out what our options are while we're still in a trap. We're trying to as a group, like some of us have individually maybe, especially very advanced spiritually, people have transcended it on a personal level. But the key here is that we all do this together as a species.
Right.
So, so what do you have? What kind of things in your book is about that sort of? I mean, what did you discover that you wrote out in your book?
Well, for me, one of the questions that I really needed to answer is this physical realm intentional or random? And one of the key books that I ran across that answered that question very convincingly was Michio Kaku's Parallel Worlds. In Parallel Worlds, he specifically quotes 6 specific parameters, omega, epsilon, lambda, n, d, and q, that had to be set exactly correct at the Big Bang. Omega is the relative density of the universe. If it was smaller, the universe would have expanded and cooled too fast. If larger, the universe prematurely collapses. Epsilon's the relative amount of hydrogen that converts to helium in the fusion process. If it's larger, no hydrogen would have survived the Big Bang. If smaller, nuclear binding force is too weak. On and on like that. And it occurred to me that this is an intentional creation. Okay, now when people hear that, the first thing they think of is their favorite God. Well, God exists. God did it. But if you think about the algorithm that this physical universe is run by, i.e. predation, survival of the fittest, an omniscient, loving deity who could make any type of universe that he wanted, you probably wouldn't have selected that as the algorithm to run the universe by. And then you run into these ideas that, this is a byproduct of some sort of computer virus, that made things this way, where evil exists and everything. So the first thing that I had to do is go all the way back to the Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago, and ascertain scientifically 100% fact that this is an intentional creation. The only alternative to that is a little piece of speculation by modern physicists called M theory, where there's an infinite number of random universes, and we just happen to live in the one that got it exactly right. And to me, that takes more faith than most of the fundamentalist religions. That's out there to me. It's easier, for my mind at least, to wrap around the fact that these parameters were necessary to such a fine degree, the fine-tuning of the universe for it to be life-bearing, that there is an intelligence vastly superior to humanity that is behind all this.
Well, it seems to me that this intelligence, what I get from my experiences and research and everything, this intelligence, in some level, we are it, and it is ourselves. And this sub-parsing down into this individual avatars is part of the divine perfection of the plan as well. We agree to go unconscious in order to further diversify creation and, have something to do. Otherwise, there's nothing to do. So,
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. It's like going to a movie and saying, okay, I'm going to go into the Stephen King movie, and some people go into the dark side. It's like signing up to be in a play. Oh, I want to play the villain. I want to play the hero. I want to play the victim, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and
we might just be having fun.
There's a point where you become aware of it all, and it's really weird. It's like, oh, I see it all. But then
if in
you're here.
2009 I had chosen to go forth, I might have found myself in a lab with a helmet on, and you take the helmet off and go, dang, that was great. Let's do it again.
Great. Let's do it again. Well, you can do that. Anybody can do that. Anybody who does meditation or entheogens or something has near-death experiences, once you know the way, you know the way. So if you know the way to San Jose, you know the way to go to oneness and source, the universal consciousness, and the Big Bang, the first I am, and everything. It's all available to you. It's just.
Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Michael Newton, the guy that wrote the book Journey of Souls?
I'm very familiar with Dr. Michael Newton's work. Yes. And actually,
that's an excellent book.
Happened upon through a hypnosis session I had in 1989 or 90. That I was a planet creator. And I came out of the hypnosis where I was in tears, just streaming down my face, and I was reliving all these decisions to come here. And I went past my first incarnation. I saw like all this suffering and souls trapped in this, the bardo. And I made a decision to come back and help, and I could have gone, to a higher vibratory frequency. And this whole long thing came out, but then when I was done with this hypnosis, I said, well, that was really cool, but what, am I crazy or something here? That I'm a planet creator? And then I read the Michael Newton book years later. That was in the 80s, right? Here it is, whenever Borders went out of business. I bought all Michael Newton's books, and I just read them one after another. And I read that and go, well, honey, guess what? I'm a planet creator. It's right here in this book, and I did it in the hypnosis thing back in 1989. So apparently as souls, we have the ability to do everything, whatever we want to do. And yet we send our threads down into physicality, into these avatars, and we've donned our human suits and our male suit or female suit or whatever, and we're here. You still, at the end of the day, like you came back to life. It's like, okay, I'm alive. I better go cut the grass.
Yeah. Your idea that, if I understand you correctly, that somehow the aliens might be us or the creators of the universe might be us, I've considered that, like there had to be something prior to what we call the Big Bang, the beginning of this universe, and perhaps we're the remnant of the most advanced society from a previous universe who figured out that the only way to survive was to embed ourselves somehow from a microscopic level into a new universe, and that we're actually re-evolving into what we once were in a previous universe.
And there's a theory, I think it's, I'm going to have him on my show, what's his name, from Australia, one of the contactees. He said everything has its twin, everything is dual. So there's, masculine and feminine, and there's Solaris and the Earth, and they're like twin flames, and he goes on and on, through the different, there's the Milky Way, and it's what's the Milky Way's twin, and Andromeda Galaxy or something. So everything has its pair, right? And so if you take his logic, that means our universe has its pair. And perhaps this, the end of the cycles within the cycles, the Kali Yuga, and we've reached the end of the grand cycle, and at that point, where do we go? But, to the next level, which is the other universes. There's no.
It's all quite an
isn't
adventure,
it?
I love it.
It's very exciting, and then when you wake up, you still got to go wash the dishes. It's like,
well,
here I am.
One aspect you were asking me about the contents of the book that I emphasize throughout is the tremendous cultural impact that the idea of flying saucers has had, on our culture at large. For example, Andrija Puharich and his channeling of the Nine up in Maine. Guess who was a good fan? Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. And it's like all of the Star Trek episodes has all these like moral lessons in there, from the channeling of the Nine. Deep Space Nine even probably made a reference to the Nine. And you take the most hardcore skeptic, and they are also influenced by flying saucers, whether they believe in them or not. I like what Neil deGrasse Tyson says about science. The nice thing about science is that it's true whether you believe it in or not. Well, the impact of flying saucers on our psyche is powerful, whether you believe in them or not.
and that just goes in with one thing. My husband's a psychotherapist. He's an anthropologist. He does empty speak. He does all the stuff. He's an amazing man. He's almost 76 years old, and he's doing yoga on the way to the beach to the gym, right? So he's just doing it all. And I sit here, I go, wow, I'm married to this guy. But anyway, I said to him, this is my universe because it's like Facebook. I liked everything. So I'm in a Star Trek universe. I liked Gene Roddenberry when I was 12 years old back in 1966, right? So that's one of my likes, right? and I liked UFOs. So here we are. Now UFOs are dominant, and they're like everybody's got it. And I like Victor I. Sitchin, and I go, look at it. When you think about it, there's probably another universe based on somebody else's likes or their perception of the same world is that this world is pretty much, think of it in terms of Facebook. What are we liking? So here, the three of us have liked this whole thing of UFOs, ghosts, paranormal, whatever, and we're doing this show. And it seems to be the dominant operating system. But every day there's more and more people liking this worldview. And like yourself, I keep hearing, I was asleep. There was this episode or this insight, and all of a sudden I woke up, and now I'm, like you did. I just read 300 books. And I hear this over and over and over again. And it's all my fault because I want you to wake up because ultimately, I'm not altruistic, I want to have a universe that stops all this stupid war and moves into Star Trek and not Star Wars.
Right. There seems to be two futures ahead of us. One is very apocalyptic and dim. It's the one that the Space Brothers of the 50s warned the contactees about. If you play with matches, you're going to get burnt. And the other one is very hopeful and very transcendent. And hopefully in my book I gave both edges of that double-edged sword, that the contraries are the weirdos, the biological robots that are interested in our technological singularity, possibly for us to create an artificial intelligence format that they can permanently incarnate into this realm. Thomas Horn writes a lot about that in Exo Vaticana. Of course, he has the fundamentalist Christian view that when he's thinking that when CERN opens up this portal that it's to the gates of hell and all these demons are going to come through and into our realm and there's going to be a final battle and all that. And I sort of categorize all that into the apocalyptic stuff, and I try to shove it aside in the dust webs of my mind because what I want to focus on is the transcendence of the human race into something much better and much brighter than what we've created thus far. And that's where I want to put my energies. Even when it comes to like watching television shows like Lord of Rings and the Vikings, it's like I started having really bad dreams about it, where I was in situations where people were wanting to kill me. And I realized it's pornography.
It's fear porn. It's fear porn.
Yeah, it's fear porn, exactly.
Well, see, that's what we discovered when we went to the UFO Congress with David M. Jacobs, and there was Barbara Lamb, and David M. Jacobs represents, the artificial intelligence. The grays are going to take over, and there's nothing we can do. It's a reality. They're going to grab it, and we're all going to be cloned. And that's going to be the next human species, and they have an evil agenda. And then there's Barbara Lamb, and she comes on the stage with 6 of her hybrids, and everybody's loving and new age and spiritual, and it's a great world. And so I talked to David Jacobs. I go, so this is your conclusion of, 30, 40 years of research?
He's very pessimistic.
What we pieced together when we stepped back and looked at it is that it's his like. So he likes this dark agenda, and so his clients are attracted to him, and they all like the dark agenda, and that's why everything he's doing and all his people are dark. But then Barbara Lamb likes the spiritual light, and then the people she attracts to her practice are all these light, and so she has a completely different reality than David Jacobs. So we are the chooser of our realities. Where do you want to go? Like you said, what are you going to eat? Whatever you ingest in through your eyes and your ears and your mouth, whatever is what food you're putting in your body. And if you watch the Vikings, which I did, and I didn't finish even the first series, like when they did that little thing where they drawed and quartered somebody or whatever that was, I said, enough.
Yeah, I get it. I understand totally what you're saying, and I agree with you. It's it takes you to a very dark place, and it shows up in your dreams. There's fear in your dreams. All of a sudden, you're in positions where people are trying to kill you, and you've got to kill them. And it's like, this is not good. This is not the direction that I want to go. So I kind of unplugged from that whole thing. And but it's age-old wisdom that as below, so above, as above, so below. The evil and the good in this world is magnified 1 billion times in the higher celestial realms, and it's up to each individual to select, which direction they want to go. It's almost as if Ed Fredkin was right. He's the old AI instructor, and he suspected at the time that he was playing with this that the universe is a computer trying to solve a problem. So whoever the creators are that put all these original parameters into place, created the physical universe as a computational matrix using subatomic particles for bits of computation, including us, to figure something out that they didn't know. And as near as I can tell, what they're trying to figure out is, given an algorithm of survival of the fittest, which paradigm will win in the end of the eons, the forces of light or the forces of darkness? It's almost like it's a machine intelligence that doesn't understand emotions, that created this format for its own knowledge, So, and
that makes
also,
total sense. That makes total sense. That it's like we're in the middle of this matrix, this hologram, this computation that's been going since the dawn of time, and well, there's where you win. If you realize you're in the game, then you start to have control of the information and the outcome.
Yeah, Michio Kaku's concept of quantum decoherence event, I believe is what he calls it, makes a lot of sense. If Planck time, which is a very, very small unit of time, there's more units of Planck time in a second than there was seconds since the Big Bang. That's the only reality that we have, is these small units of Planck time. And there may be beings who operate in the time sequence in bundled Planck time, where they would be invisible to us because they're hyper-accelerated. And there's lots of examples in the UFO material that indicate that we're dealing with something that's normally invisible, that has the ability to slow down their frequencies, like maybe the Turkey UFO event, is the beings in that craft were doing exactly the same thing 3 years in a row. That'd be an awful boring way to spend 3 years. So I'm thinking that time to them is different than what it's time to the people behind the camera. And if they're traveling in bundled Planck time, where, like if you fold up a piece of paper back and forth and ram a pencil through it, and then you take it all out, all the little holes are going to be equally spaced to one another, and that may be why the UFOs show up in window areas at approximately the same time and the same days and all that. They're traveling through our time-space continuum in a different fashion than what we're experiencing it. They're normally invisible. Then if they so choose, they can adjust their frequency and come down into our realm for a specific purpose or to make a contact or whatever their purposes are.
And that's in our science fiction. That was an episode in Star Trek where they said we're changing our vibratory frequency so you can see us. There was several Star Trek episodes that was explored in Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. Michael Valentine Smith was raised on Mars by the beings that were at a different vibratory frequency, and then he was able to see them, but nobody else could.
Yeah,
that makes total sense.
For the one episode of Star Trek, where they go, and they disappear, and then everybody around them is perfectly still. Something along those lines is likely going on all around us all the time.
That makes sense. Karen,
so it's amazing you brought up science fiction, because I personally think that science fiction and science are kind of a Mobius loop. Science fiction serves as the prophecy of things to come, and it's laughed at first, and then all of a sudden it happens. Look at the flip-open calculator that Captain Kirk had compared to the flip-open cell phones, that happened 20 or 30 years later. I saw an old Star Trek episode, and somebody had the equivalent of a Bluetooth device in their ear, and none of these things were even heard of, and then they come to pass. Now we're talking about teleportation and, things that we saw, decades ago on Star Trek.
I remember being... Let me just say one thing then over to you, Karen. I remember being a child when all that stuff was coming out. and the conversations I would have with all the people into Star Trek about, this is our future. It really is coming to pass. And we were so excited that these things were being revealed because, the 60s was kind of primitive when you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
It's really primitive. And I was always so frustrated because when I went to computer school, I started in 1967 or something. They had it in junior high school, and I just got up out of frustration. I said, no, this is too slow. I'm going to come back when you catch up with my version of reality. And they did. They eventually did catch up. I left for like 15 years, and then I finally looked at computers again or something like that, 10, 15 years. Karen,
Mm-hmm.
your turn. You've been far too quiet. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just been listening, and I came in that 15 years later. I grew up in I was the first kid. I was the kid in my high school. There's 4 of us that were the first computer class in high school. I took computer science in college in the early 80s, and that first cell phone I had was that Motorola StarTAC. It had the flip phone. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. I had to have it. But then we have like Horace. She's got the thing sticking out of her ear. There's our Bluetooth, and then they're running around with little tiny tapes, which is like our later floppy disk. And now we get our teeny tiny little 8 gigabyte things on our phone, and of course the iPad kind of things that they had like in Star Trek later. So Star Trek's always been basically advised by experts who are anticipating what's going to be invented, and they showed it to us, and you saw it there first. But as well as esoteric, many esoteric concepts. And people need to realize, like you were saying, science fiction is like what happens is if somebody can't say it factually, they can't assert it factually and say, yes, this is the truth or whatever, they would put it in science fiction form. So a lot of our movies, books, and all that sort of thing, sometimes those experiences or visions of things that people saw that they put in a science fictional context because they were, you really couldn't assert that. And I'm really interested in the part of the story when you're Mr. Skeptic, and this happens to you, kind of what happens with your relationship with your skeptic friends, because we've gone back and forth. I'm in the Lunar Anomaly Research Society. We get people from the NASA Persuasion, and we go back and forth, and they say the stuff we're seeing is pareidolia, and there's kind of a culture of skepticism.
Well, that's an easy question to answer, and they think I've lost my mind.
Ha! Me too.
Isn't it fun?
That was fun. You joined the crazy club with the rest of them. Yeah.
But I tell you what, I'm going to throw a bone to my skeptic friends that say you can't get here from there. If you're 100 million light years away, it'd take you 100 million light years, even at the speed of light, to come here. The sheer volume of the UFO sightings negates the whole thing. It's got to be delusional. Well, they're right. You can't get here from there. You've got to transcend into transdimensional space somehow or another and travel on the wave of consciousness, or, instantaneous travel, non-local travel, going beyond the space-time matrix as we know it in order to successfully travel throughout the universe. And I personally sense and suspect that there are super beings out there far beyond humanity that are able to do that and that are doing it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in other words, you got to think past our paradigm where we're still burning fuel like a caveman.
Right. We've got these. You mentioned something earlier about the primitive 1950s. I want to talk about that for just a second, because George Adamski's little clunky little Venusian scout craft, and it's amazing that even a lot of people think that photograph was faked, and maybe it was. Maybe it's the top of a chicken coop, and it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why. Because those style of flying saucer have been photographed all over the world for decades. And it almost makes me wonder if he'd have fabricated a flying saucer out of a flying banana, if all of a sudden, people would have seen flying bananas everywhere. There's a reflective element within the UFO phenomena which indicates to me that these plasmoid creatures that we're trying to come to grips with their reality and understand are connected in with the human unconscious. They're fully aware of our science fiction. They're fully aware of the thoughts that are in our mind, the imagery that are in our mind. And if one of these plasmoid luminous spheres comes close to somebody and they interact with somebody's mind and do like a quick mind scan, they can transmogrify that energy into a quasi-physical object that is according to the way the percipient thinks it ought to look. And that's why in the 1950s, we had all these, they looked like they were made out of hammered aluminum, flying around. And now people are seeing light ships and transparent invos and just all kinds of really fantastic stuff. That's because our consciousness has changed. And that's not a testament to the delusional nature of the UFO phenomena. It's a testament to how advanced this intelligence is that's interacting with us, that they can keep in touch with our psyche as it progresses through the eons and produce imagery for us that's just beyond our reach, just beyond our reach. And it keeps us going.
And that's precisely what the extraterrestrials tell me. I went to a meeting with 100, there was like a big, huge gathering, 100,000 different beings. And the place that we were at was designed for my convenience so I wouldn't be uncomfortable. And go right back into my body. When you're uncomfortable, you get afraid, you pop back in your body. So they said, we're creating this for your convenience. And the beings that were gathered were in the range that my psyche could accept. So they were bipedal with some kind of face and some kind of eyes in the front of the face, and they had the hands with opposing thumb, and, they had some basic form within a range. And they told me that. They said, this is what you can take. There are other beings that you would think are just, you would have judgments, and you might not even see them, like that the ship on the horizons, and the Indians couldn't see it until the first one could see it. You wouldn't even be able to put them in your mind to understand it. So we're not going to try to show them to you. We're just going to limit it to these beings that you can relate to on some level, and so I think you're right. You're on to something, because why did they look like that? Now, there's a story that the Nazis had the technology, and so they were, retrofitting them to the current technology. And now we've got, I don't know, it seems to be a little bit of all the above, What is the current technology of the planet where you're at, and what can people, get their minds around? I like what you
said. Science fiction author, he's also a scientist, I believe, David Brin. I saw him on an interview the other day, and he's talking about how boring the little grays are. And it is a very benign, very palatable image, for the human mind to wrap around and comprehend. But it may not be the true appearance of the intelligences that we're dealing with. And one of my favorite fantasies is that when the singularity does arrive, and we have artificial intelligence that we can interface with that expands our intelligence by billions of times, that we'll actually be able to see our visitors for who they are. And I just see them as, these blobs of energy with tentacles hanging off of it or something. It's like, this is what we've been all along. We tried to make it easy for you.
You make sense. You make sense. Yeah. So the singularity, when does it arrive?
2045 to 2080. Well,
and
I
just
read.
What makes you say that time frame?
Well, it was originally proposed by Ray Kurzweil, and what it was in his book in the 90s, I believe it came out, called The Singularity is Near. And it was a best-selling book at the time. And where he got his calculations was we've been going by what they call Moore's Law, where technology will double every year. And we're moving beyond that now into an exponential increase in technology. And this is only going to keep going in a sharper and sharper curve. And the people that live between now and 2045 are going to be, it's going to be really difficult to catch up. A lot of people are going to get left in the dust. You see it in the movies all the time, smart matter, nanotechnology, things that just, blow you away. And he calculated a date of 2045 to 2080 when technology will reach a point that he calls the singularity, where there's just like it completely transforms the entire human existence. And by coincidence, when I was invited to the haunted house, it was right a couple of months before December 21st, 2012, where everybody was either hoping for a transcendence or the end of the world, or, depending on the way you look at it. Well, Graham Hancock just wrote a wonderful book called Magicians of the Gods and Supernatural. But both of those books are really excellent. And he figured out that the end of the calendar is actually a window between 1960 and 2040. And it's funny how all this stuff coincides in some weird synchronicity. You know, the end of the calendars, the precession of the equinox every 26,920 years or whatnot, the singularity, the end of the oil, they're saying is like 30 years from now. So all of these things are pointing to that date where life as we know it is going to be completely different. And I see on Facebook all the time people are complaining that their job was replaced by a computer. I think McDonald's just replaced the cashiers with robots, and all of our jobs are going to be like that. You know,
right.
So between now and 2045, as each one of our jobs is replaced by artificial intelligence, it's going to call for a complete restructuring of society. We're probably going to go to a moneyless society, a global, I know that scares a lot of people when you say global government, but it's going to have to be like that. And there's even two views, one dismal and one positive, about the unified planet idea. Michio Kaku talks about a type 1 civilization, which we are type 0 right now. We haven't even unified as a planet. And the way he portrays it is, you know, we must unify as a planet and be a cohesive whole. There's just humanity, and that's it, and it sounds very good and positive. And then the way a lot of the conspiracy folks say it's, you know, the New World Order run by reptilian shape-shifting entities that are going to enslave humanity. There really is this double-edged sword of human thinking, and it'll be very interesting, and I think it's up for grabs which one prevails in the end, because even the creators of the universe don't know for sure which way it's going to go. They're highly entertained by all this.
And I think there's a new article out that and I took it off my front page. But anyway, the Russians didn't think that the 256 strands of DNA that are shut off were actually junk. They said nature doesn't make mistakes like that, or God doesn't make mistakes like that. They're not junk. And so they did research into it. And what they discovered is that we totally control our DNA. Our minds are able to, you know, what we think is what we can do, and that our word and verbiage actually influences our DNA. So like we were talking about earlier, be careful what you take in all ways, what you
exactly.
digest.
We really are Googling the universe as we go.
As we go.
And you can go with associated links in all kinds of synchronistic fashion to the positive or the negative. And this is where I think the Russians are ahead of the United States scientists. If you go to wavegenetic.ru, they're saying that some of the mechanisms of evolution have to do with cosmic rays coming from the center of the galaxy that are turning on our DNA with light in a very intelligent fashion. So the traditional view of evolution may be a little bit askew. It always seemed to me like you're building a computer with a hammer if you think that all of the various morphologies that we've seen on this planet for the last 500 million years has come from genetic drift, random genetic mutations, when mutations are usually harmful. You know, and the processes that everyone learns in high school that is fueling evolution. It's something much more complex and vast than all that, and there is intelligence involved. So a good author to read on that regard would be Dr. Ron Joseph. He wrote some astrobiological books that go into the whole process of how some of these evolutionary functions. And another good one, who is a fundamentalist Christian, is, I forget what his name is now, but Darwin's Doubt is the book. I've got it sitting on my shelf. I've been meaning to read it, but he goes into all of the mechanisms of that would be required to build a biological organism of femtotechnology, which is basically what we are. We're beyond nanotechnology into femtotechnology, using subatomic particles to make calculations. And this is not something that could just come about, by accident.
Mm-hmm. Wow, fascinating.
Even Frank Drake, the inventor of the double helix, was on board with that. He said there's no way that DNA could have been made, by accident. It's scientifically impossible. But that bothers a lot of people because then it brings up all these theological questions.
Another person that came to mind when you were talking about all that was Rupert Sheldrake, who's talking about the genetic field. The biokind biominds, and it kind of a suggestion that the entire species learns together like a 100 monkey, scenario, and that some of these, like when we do fiction, somebody writes science fiction, they're really dipping into the shared mind that we all have.
Right.
That where we're learning, because we're learning, that we're going to start. We were talking about Googling the universe. I've been pretty convinced the internet was given to us by probably a race that was watching over us, because
sure.
really, as a student of technology, I realized that thought forms are pre-manifestation energetics that was talked about by like the theosophical type people when they talked about thought forms. Literally is what we're using, when we're using the internet. When we said Google the universe, that's another term for that is vector intention. So it's kind of like if you're dipping into the shared knowledge of the universe when you're Googling the universe, and whatever shape your question is the answer you get. So it's like water. It's like a vast ocean. If you put a teacup in there, you'll get a teacup answer. If you put a vase question, you'll get a vase answer, that sort of thing. And what kind of really strikes me about that is young children who, it took me a while to figure out some device or another. It's fun to have a grandchild because they will just pick up the thing and fix it for you, right? Because they're born to the generation that belongs to. They're born to the future, and so somewhere inside them is all that shared knowledge, and it's almost instinctual. Very young children just jump right into technology, no problem. And if that whole process accelerates as it has been, we'll get to that point where we will, I don't know if we'll necessarily meld with machines exactly, except that we'll discover our untapped potential for reaching into the, Akashic record or just the shared knowledge of the universe.
Sure.
I think it's rapidly coming toward us. I really do.
I wonder if the Akashic records aren't like some sort of cosmic library where interstellar travelers can, read something interesting and say, oh, let's go visit here for a while. These people sound pretty cool. Rupert Sheldrake, he wrote that book Beyond Science. I guess he couldn't title it that in the United States, so he titled it something completely different, that Beyond Science or something more benign. But the idea of morphogenic fields is interesting to me because the whole premise of that is that a biological form that works on a particular planet will automatically be duplicated in several other locations all across the universe, which means that somewhere out there in the cosmos we would probably see humanoids and all the other types of creatures that we're used to seeing here. It's a form that works in a certain environment, so when that environment is produced elsewhere, these morphogenic fields, create matter from thought, and life gets going on that planet as well. And I think there's a good argument for the UFOnauts being humanoid myself, because technology isn't going to happen unless you master fire, and you can't master fire unless there's oxygen. So chances are anybody that masters fire breathes oxygen, and then you have to have appendages and stuff. That's one way I disagree with David Brin. He thinks that the humanoid idea of aliens is a lack of imagination. And I disagree with him on that because I think probably humanoids in various forms from various primitive stock, be it canine or avian, are out there. And they've got eyes and they've got a mouth and they communicate and they have appendages for technology. But anybody flying around there in space in a technological craft of some sort probably came from a planet with oxygen and fire, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, that's
the idea of how that there's been, when you look at the experience or phenomenon and all the different types of beings, that have been cataloged, it's literally like tens of thousands of different encounters. So many of them are at the humanoid base, even if they're just got 4 fingers and a thumb. Thumb's kind of an important, and or anything like a Bigfoot or to a gray to any of insectozoid. But that bipedal form seems to be really ubiquitous, even if it's a person that's a cat person or insectozoid. It's interesting how that still stays in that same range, because like you're saying, you need to have that form in order to really machinate the kind of technology that develops later. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. I think the bottom line is that we're just now beginning to discover some of the machinations of the universe. So anything goes at this point. We should keep an open mind because we're just in the beginning stages of this journey. On the cosmic calendar, we're like in the last 2 seconds. and we've got a long future ahead of us, and I'm hoping that it will be a good one.
Well, Lloyd Pye was talking with my husband, Dr. Lester, and it was a wonderful interview, and it got lost in one of those, incidences where it just got lost to the universe. But they were talking about how there's no real evolution, there's microevolution, but it appears that our species are seeding, we're having punctuated periods of evolution based on interventionism and seeding of life throughout the universe. So these visitations, these different things can come, and it could be intelligent, direction or design to how these things happen. They can come from, meteorites, or they can come from extraterrestrials landing to check on their terraforming project. And that brings me back to Dr. Michael Newton's. Perhaps that's what's going on. This seeding of life throughout the universe is part of, some part of our beings. That's their purpose. That's their mission, is to go around and check on things, and maybe let's introduce this faction, that faction. And then when you go into the literature or the stories from the whistleblowers, what's his name? Spencer, get his first name, sorry, I apologize. He did the alien interview with Errol LeGray, who was the one that was captured at Roswell, and she says that they actually have a planet where you can, I want something kind of in the butterfly form, and you can select your species that you get your planet seeded with, but of course, because it's in a different environment, because no two environments are like anywhere in the universe, there's going to be the macroevolution, and the species will evolve and adapt to its environment. Just like earlier Karen and I were talking about her seeds didn't work in this garden because they came from Texas, so she has to get seeds that are adapted to her New Mexico climate for them in order to grow. And then the planet Serpo story, if you read that, the humans agreed to go on this mission to Serpo. It was an exchange program, and en route, one of the humans died, and they were just appalled that the Greys had taken them and started taking their DNA and making new things with it. It's like, wait, this is our person, we want to bury him, whatever ritual. And they were going, well, DNA belongs to the universe. And it was funny that Robert Heinlein said that in his books, like Stranger in a Strange Land and Time Enough for Love, where he talked about, genetics. And he said, no one owns their DNA. It belongs to the universe, belongs to the cosmos. So anyway, just thought
I really
those
like
things.
Lloyd Pye and his work with the Star Child skull. And there seems to be quite a few really odd skulls scattered around this planet that seem to be from the period of time of about 600 AD to 900 AD, where when they analyze it, they find out there's a human mother and a kind of an undefined father or a non-human father. And I think people get confused a little bit when they say that it's got 92% of human genes. Well, lots of things in the universe probably have 92% human genes. We share 98% with chimpanzees, but look at the difference between a human and a chimpanzee. So just a 3% difference between us and some extraterrestrial would be equal to the difference between humans and chimpanzees. And
right.
Dr. Neil Tyson is afraid of that. I sense, from his YouTube presentations, that he's afraid that if aliens came here, sometimes they'll come out and say it, and they don't realize what they've said. Like Neil Tyson will say, I'm afraid that if aliens came here, we might be too stupid to even understand that they were here. And that's exactly the situation.
We are. What do you mean we might be?
Yeah.
Well,
but he talked.
It's like, we're looking right at them. They actually, sit down and have meals with us. How would you know? I had one whistleblower, and she says they're always walking amongst us. The ones that she worked on ship with, they lacked a pinky, the small finger. And when they come down and walk among Earthlings, they put on this little artificial small finger.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know if they're anything different. They look just like us. And the cosmos is strewn with humanoids. And, they're all different sizes, just like we have primordial dwarfs. Those humans. There's only a couple hundred of them alive at a time, and it's some kind of genetic defect, all the way up to people with giantism, and they, are 7-8 feet tall. So humans have this huge range. So even if you have an alien that's a humanoid species, they could be the same range that humans are.
Sure.
Yeah,
there's something that you mentioned earlier, something haunting from our past that concerning the dinosaurs, if there were terraformers, if there were really intelligent cosmic terraformers, and that they had a hand even back in the age of the dinosaurs, and they knew that this big cosmic calamity was coming, they'd take a species that maybe had the biggest brain, like Troodon, and take them to another planet and let them evolve and save them. And maybe at some point, after 65 million years of evolution, they might want to come back and get back on their home planet.
I think that type of thing happens all the time. And you look at the stories of how the reptilians were once here, and some of them went underground with the passing of the Biru. We have a universe where there's cataclysms periodically, and that just kind of shakes things up and reconstructs things. And then, during one of my extraterrestrial encounters, you're talking about the large dinosaurs that might be intelligent. When I was on Johnson Atoll, and I don't know anybody else had this experience, and if you've had, please contact me. But I was taken by my Grays, and they were military. It was a My Labs abduction. And we went to an underwater part of we went out under the ocean and to an underground facility there. And eventually I was taken down to see a large dragon. It was the size of a dinosaur, maybe even bigger. And she was too big for me to have an intelligent conversation with, so she projected a little avatar. Once again, they're always concerned about my comfort whenever I have an experience. If I'm uncomfortable, they read my mind, and it's like, okay, we're going to adapt and make it comfortable for Janet. They treat me like a princess, honestly. I've never had that experience.
Well, that does bring up the subject of crypto-terrestrials. The late Mac Tanis wrote a good book called Crypto-Terrestrials. It talks about possible undersea or underground populations.
So there you are. So she was very intelligent. There were these Anunnaki around us, and the Greys, and it was several species. There was like a mantis. It was like a mantis, tall gray hybrid. Don't limit yourself to their 65 species. No. There are endless species, out there and visiting this planet. And, I loved her. Let's send on some more, whatever. Let's bring on the Loch Ness Monster. Maybe she's intelligent. Try to limit ourselves to humanoids,
The Loch Ness Monster is a whole interesting subject, and the fact that Boleskine House was right there in Scotland where Aleister Crowley lived. And that whole little eddy current of ufology, where in 1919 in New York, Aleister Crowley opened up a portal and, contacted this being named Lamb that by coincidence looks pretty much like the description of alien Greys. Well, he shut the portal, and then back in 1947, you've got Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, trying to reopen the portal, right before Roswell happened, and the whole thing just cut loose. So who knows?
Yeah, it's sad to say, by the way. Sad to say that house you're talking about just burned to the ground beginning of this year, I think. It actually caught fire. This is the Aleister Crowley house that he was just talking about, yeah. Yeah, I believe that was
somebody
the one.
I knew spent the night there, but I can't remember who it was. Somebody I knew said they actually... Where was it located again? It was... What part of the world was it?
Over by Loch Ness, the Boleskine House?
Yeah, I think that was the one.
Said they went in there, they stuck in there, they spent the night, and it was really creepy. Anyway, it wasn't you. Okay.
Well, I guess there's a lot of people that think that Loch Ness is some sort of specter that was conjured by Aleister Crowley, since he did all kinds of magic rituals there. His same house was purchased, I believe, by Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin for a number of years.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Loch Ness story goes before Crowley. I don't think it started with him. I think it was before that.
was before
I'm
that?
not certain about that. Yeah, the Loch Ness Monster story goes before him. So
probably.
I've got a book sitting on my desk called The Dragon and the Disc by a guy named Holiday that I haven't read yet, but I've been wanting to get around to that because it talks about the whole legend that the legend of dragons was always associated with flying discs. I want to see what he has to say about that.
Yeah, and also Bigfoot. Where I come from in Washington State, if you have a hot spot for UFOs, typically it's also a hot spot for Bigfoot. I knew of two places in Washington State that were like that. One was East Eddy Ranch, James Gilliland's property. I went out there, and that was quite an experience. It's near Mount Adams, which has been kind of a weird place for a long time from the stories of the Native Americans that were there. But basically, when I was there, I saw 17 UFOs, and he was really careful to track the traffic up in the air. So you can see the Portland to Seattle, air thing was way off on one side. So you have the airplanes going by, so you know it wasn't that. And then they tracked the satellites, so they ruled those out. So anything you saw after that, and of course by the movement, kind of wobbly movements and powering up and powering down and changing direction and all that, it must have opened my mind up because that year, for the rest of that summer, I was staying on right and left where I lived, But also that same area had a lot of Bigfoot activity as well, and I know several Bigfoot researchers who pretty much say that the UFO phenomenon and the Bigfoot phenomenon are related, and one researcher is, willing to say that that the Bigfoot race is like an ET race, kind of like when you see in Star Wars. And Star Wars, there's another science fiction series that reveals quite a bit of information if you know what to look for. But there's really a lot more going on, and I just got to know, like, what is in the mind? I was religious skeptic, so I just kind of went on with what my church told me about everything, but my personal experiences pushed me into looking into it more. But as far as like a scientific skeptic person, what kind of like parameters do they got around them, that they can't see this? Because like you were saying, you were going to write down every UFO thing, and I think some people think there's only been like 10 UFO things in history, like Roswell, Rendlesham Forest, just like about 10, because you hear those over and over again, right?
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
And then you actually look into it, you find out that there's 10 per month if you go look on the reporting things like MUFON.
It's staggering, and that's where a lot of the UFO skeptics saying that the sheer numbers negates the whole phenomenon, but it's just because we don't really understand how the universe works. If we understood more about how the universe actually works and how some of the portals open and close and how the interdimensional mechanics works, then we'd see that the figures are fully justified. And you kind of have to go backwards on that. Okay, there's so many reports. They're saying the same thing cross-culturally around the world. We're dealing with a real phenomena, so what is it, And the Hessdalen lights kind of fascinate me, too, over in Norway, because some of the equipment that they set up to study the Hessdalen lights, the spectrometer didn't register light. What the people were seeing with their eyes as balls of light wasn't registering on the spectrometer, which would give you an indication that it wasn't really light as we knew it. And then the radar, told them that there was an associated invisible object with the lights that we couldn't see. So that's where the more paraphysical technologies of the coming singularity will open our eyes into interdimensional vision and be able to see some of these types of phenomena for what it really is. Because right now we're limited into the range that humans can see, the range that humans can hear, and we're surrounded by all this electromagnetic activity that we can't perceive at all. So, we're going to need to augment our intelligence in some sort of electronic fashion in order to see reality for what it really is.
I think one thing accelerating our intelligence already, probably every other day I say, I love the Internet, because if I can't remember a movie star, I could look up their name, or a UFO case, anything like that, is the fact that we're now like a connected brain with each other. Like researchers can really accelerate their knowledge because they can, like you said, they have access. You can go ask the guy that wrote that paper something. And so that to me is like we're more connected to each other. We're almost beginning to think together, as a big brain kind of, in a very overt kind of way. This isn't even just about our spiritual interconnectedness. This is just our information sharing. And I would say I'm in the I don't want to say like the first generation of internet people, but I was on bulletin board systems and assisted doing bulletin board systems before there was an internet, right? So I watched it happen, kind of. And, of course, like my children would be, like, the ones that grow up on it and everything. And then I got a grandkid. Now, I keep thinking, what is he going to – how's this going to be when he's my age? I can see that acceleration. So it's kind of like the guides have shown us how to use fire, and now they're giving us kerosene to throw on the fire in terms of lighting us up and us. Isn't it harder to go to war with people if you can talk to the people in that part of the world? Some of the things that have happened online where we could watch these things in Egypt, the revolutions in Egypt and other places. We depersonalize people in other countries in a way that's getting way harder to do now.
Yeah, travel has always been one of the best ways to dispel any type of cultural barriers, and we can travel now on the internet, and we can see, Palestine in the 1940s. We can see, what people are proud of in the country of Iran. We can go to these various places and interact. I love the translation features that are evolving on Facebook because I'm hoping that we can get to the point, we might already be there and I don't know it, where you can talk to somebody in a foreign country and it will automatically translate it for you. And when we start making those types of connections with the people in one country and forget the politicians, the people in one country are talking to the people in another country, that's when we're going to realize that this whole bombing everybody is just something that's got to go.
I agree. It's really hard to hate somebody when they're sitting in their living room and you're doing a meal together. You're breaking bread together, and you really get to talk to them and come down. And I hope they keep coming down.
Yeah, people want to meet people from outer space, and they're not even able to get along with the person that lives across the world from them. And I think that's one of the lessons that we're going to have to learn before any galactic community will accept us completely, is that we have to realize our common humanity and realize that we're all just, we're the same species. We're the, everybody on the planet can interbreed. We're all the same species. There's no reason for any remnant of tribalism or nationalism to really, take precedent.
Well, I think that's the last frontier is when the extraterrestrials do start walking among us. Then we're going to realize the absurdity of our bigotry against our own species, and it'll just become apparent. We really need to get along with these people because look at them. They're, there's a blue person sitting there. We used to be upset about black, yellow, red, pink people. Now we're going to be, there's blue people and purple people and green people, and people don't even look like people. And they are all beings, they're all intelligent, sentient life. And so that's what my reality is when I go to these places and there's just, dozens to thousands of different individual species. Many of us can interbreed with them, so we are a species of some. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things that you brought up about the interbreeding. We've got a couple of abduction cases that are very interesting. One of them is in 1957, I believe, the Antonio Villas-Boas case, where he was sort of bred, with another being, another female being. Well, a lot of people ridiculed that account until more and more of these types of experiences were reported. And then finally in the 90s, Peter Corey, he came with some physical evidence. There was actually a hair left behind, and UFO researcher Bill Chalker wrote a whole book on that called The Hair of the Alien. And they actually did DNA analysis on this physical trace evidence that he had of his experience and found out that it was a very odd combination of Chinese Mongoloid and a Laplander. And the cool thing about that is that John Keel used to have a sort of an ethnicity poster board that when anybody came across a UFOnaut or a man in black or anything like that, he had them point to the ethnicity that these creatures were, and they always pointed to Laplanders. So it kind of struck me as odd that that genetic code would have been in that DNA sample. So apparently, I mean, as odd as it sounds, there is some sort of interbreeding effort going on, and we have physical evidence to that effect.
And that's what all the different researchers have been talking about for many, many years, is that there's just hybridization process, and some of it is through copulation, and some of it is through taking DNA. However, the DNA can be combined from more than just two parents. So they're able to take a human egg and sperm, for example, and interject other species and make the hybrids. I have several friends that are hybrids, and they're Cynthia Crawford, her father was in the military, and on his deathbed, he confessed to her that she was a second-generation hybrid, and he had been a hybrid she has, I think, 4 different extraterrestrial different species within her, her avatar that she's incarnated in. And he was, until she's in her late 60s, mid to late 60s, and her father was born around 1920. So he was in the Korean or World War II. I think he was in World War II, and then he was working on a boat for the military and as a doctor in their lab experiments in the around the Korean War or something like that. So we have all these stories. It just rings with truth on many levels, especially when you put them all together and you go, wow.
Isn't it interesting that the individuals back in the 30s and 40s, like psychic Mark Probert and Meade Lane, in their interdimensional theories, probably had it right all along? That we're dealing with an interdimensional realm that's able to kind of pop into our reality. And you see a lot of the, I think Meade Lane was the one that coined the term mat and demat for materialization and dematerialization, because a lot of the UFO sightings that do occur, they just simply pop into this reality and then they just disappear. And they seem to have some sort of quasi-physicality. And that leads to the idea that for some reason or another, they're either unwilling or unable to remain physical for very long in this reality. And it makes you wonder if some of the technologies of the Singularity and the AI formats that are going to come about, might provide a more permanent entrance into this realm for them. Who knows?
Yeah. And then
they might start talking to us through our iPhones and Android phones.
Well, I'll tell you, when you walk down the street, it used to be if you went into a local pub, you'd see people talking to each other, and now there's a whole row of people that are staring at their cell phones and texting people, and they're not even talking to each other anymore. And you can do that at home.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if we weren't talking to him on Facebook too. Sometimes I did have a person that was a Facebook friend who claimed to be a reptilian, was on briefly, and he was very derisive of humanity, kind of how dumb we are. And it made me think of what we were talking about earlier. I call it the ticket to space. What's the ticket to space? And that is how we treat each other, where we end poverty, we end war. Because would they want us out there the way we are right now? Generally speaking, I don't.
Well,
think
that's
so.
that's a really hot concern in the artificial intelligence community right now. Eliezer Yudkowsky came up with CEV, coherent extrapolated volition, because we certainly wouldn't want to make an artificial intelligent sentient creature with our version of morality. So coherent extrapolated volition, they're trying to instill in the ability to make decisions based on a superior morality to human beings. And it kind of reminds me of what some of the friendship groups said about their ships, that they were invested in something called Eureta, which it would destroy itself before it harmed anybody. And it wasn't able to engage in any thought or action that wasn't in the eventual best interest of all parties concerned. It was sort of sinless, if you will. And
that was Isaac Asimov's basic laws of robotics, that the robot could, I forget the laws, it was, it could not do any harm to humans, and et cetera, et cetera. So That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I read Elon Musk's biography by a woman named Ashley. I forget what her last name is, but he said his biggest fear was that Larry Page with Google was going to create a race of robots that destroyed humanity. James Barrett wrote a book called Our Final Invention, that goes into a lot of that, and some of the concerns that people like Steve Omohundro and Dr. Bostrom have about this AI that they're coming out with, is potentially an existential threat to humanity, so we should be careful.
We should, yeah. I'm going to take a little break here, but you guys can keep talking. Do you want to take a break as well? We've got like half hour left in the show. Oh, there's somebody in the on hold. Why don't we ask him real quick, he or she, I should say, who they are? Are you open to a question from the audience?
Sure.
Okay, let me see who this is. Aloha, area code 843. Are you here for a question or are you just listening? Okay. Oh, hi. Did you want to ask a question, 843?
I was just listening.
Okay, thanks. We'll leave you on listening mode. I need to take a quick break. Do you want to carry on without me? Or? Okay, carry on, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm really interested in disclosure in the process by where humanity right now, it's kind of like the skeptics hold the floor. They're kind of the ones holding the space. Our media is, for instance, if they do a UFO report on the news, they're going to kind of make light of it and make science fiction references and, use the X-Files theme or, Twilight
Did you see
Zone
the first
theme.
episode of X-Files?
Oh, the new one? Yes, I did. It had a lot of conspiracies jammed in the first episode. I was kind of stunned.
That seems to be a very effective way to obfuscate something into the realm of fiction in people's minds. If you take something that might possibly actually be happening and you make it into a fiction show and you put it on public TV or make a video game out of it, then everybody just automatically assumes when they hear something similar to that it's in the category of fiction. They don't pay attention to it anymore.
What do you think is going to be the process that altogether now humanity transcends this paradigm of awareness into accepting that this is possible and being ready for contact as a whole, not just individuals to have experiences? I mean, does everyone have to have an experience, or what do you think would be some of the markers of that
there's
process?
A preparation process right now. Dr. Stephen Greer's getting together these little groups of CE5 experiencers and that are considering themselves ambassadors to the planet, and they're trying to live right, and they're trying to be a good example of humanity so that the ETs out there will, consider us worthy, so to speak. And we're headed into this technological singularity around 2045. So between now and then, more and more people, if you notice, it seems like the bad's getting worse and the good's getting better. And more people are interested in the forces of light or the light worker path, and there's more and more people that are just into self-serving dominion and power over other people and acquisition of territory and all that. So there does seem to be kind of a pairing off of the ways, so to speak. And maybe it'll wind up in a quantum decoherence event. I don't know. There's a book called The Ultimate Frontier that was written back in the 1960s by a guy named Richard Kinninger. He went by a pen name of Eklal Quashana. And he spoke of something called the progression of the life waves, where the purpose through reincarnation is to achieve a state called mastership. And it's like when you reach a certain point, you are contacted, by superior intelligent beings, just like Guy Ballard was on Mount Shasta. And more people are having these contact experiences. They're trying to get their act together, to go on that positive path. And then at the same time, we're heading into this technological singularity where we'll augment our intelligence by billions of times. And I think it'll all culminate in the decades to come, where open contact with humanity and some of the other cosmic beings that exist in this planet is openly brought about.
Is that something you feel personally too, not just something you're reading about? But I mean, how is that in your own life?
It's something I feel personally, and it's like there was something that really touched me when I saw, I think it was Jesse Jackson in tears when Barack Obama was elected, because he didn't think he would live to see the day, you know. And I instantly connected with that, and that's how I'm going to feel, you know, when open contact is actually made and everybody knows that this thing is real. And I'm going to have a good cry.
Oh, I know what you mean. I totally know that, because I'm in the crazy category with family members that I would love to not be in that category with. And I don't want to push what I, you know, believe and experience on them. And I don't ever want to say something like I told you so or anything like that. I think it's a human moment, you know, where we get invited. Yeah, well, it's like Thanksgiving. We get invited to the grown-up table, so to speak.
Yeah, it'll be the greatest event that ever happened in human history. Richard Dolan wrote a good book, A.D., After Disclosure, and goes into quite a bit of detail about, you know, the things to come and why some of the suppression is taking place, because some heads are going to roll. You know,
yeah.
I mean, there's people that have done some very bad things, including murder, you know, to take people out that got in the way of their own little personal acquisition of technology or whatever. And they're all going to have a day of accounting, and that's being postponed as long as possible. But I do think there's a faction within the intelligence organizations that exist that know more about the general public about this subject, where they're discussing it amongst themselves and wondering, you know, at what point in time do we roll this out?
Well, yeah, there's a gentleman, Alfred Weber, who was pointing to what happened in South Africa after apartheid, where there was like a truth and reconciliation process. So I think if something like that can be in place, because the most important thing is to get the information out there. I mean, punishing people, okay, that whatever, but the thing is, the kind of information that would be coming out is that they've suppressed energy technology, medical technology, all kinds of things that would really, really help humanity with all the crises that we have, or, you know, the basic human issues that we have. And so I think, you know, it's a mature society that can say, okay, we've been going in this bad way, we want to go in a better way, and it's more important to get the right information and to achieve agreement and understanding than it is to just punish people. Although I have to say, from what I know, some of the negative behaviors, it really is quite serious. So your book, like, where can people get your book, your website, any information like that?
Well, when I got the book done, when I was actually finished with it, I didn't quite know what to do with it, and I published it on Kindle. It's available in a digital format. And people, if they have Kindle Unlimited, can read it for free. You know, it's not really a money-making venture to me. I don't even want to deal with the extra form, you know, at the end of the year. So it's purchasable for $9.99, and you have lending ability. If you buy the book and you want to lend it to somebody, that's fine. My only real intention with the book is that it's a discussion stimulator. You know, I want to throw out my own 2 cents into what my own experience has been since my original NDE and the research into the UFO phenomena that I've done as a result of that. And if I hadn't had the NDE, you know, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So I kind of am thankful for it in a strange way. But yeah, it's exclusively available on Amazon in a Kindle format. It was kind of a neat experience to. I bought one when I first successfully. There's a process involved in getting it published, because you have to convert it to a MOBI file and, you know, have a compatible file to upload. And I wasn't all that technologically savvy, you know, but I kind of plodded through it and figured it all out. But when I bought one and I got it on my own Kindle and it read the book to me, that was really kind of a fantastic experience. And it's like hearing the mechanical voice go over the words. You know, I caught a little couple of corrections and everything and corrected it. If people have on their managed device and contents automatic updates, you'll get the automatic updates for it for any corrections that I make in the future. So I'm just kind of seeing how that goes. I don't really have any publishing connections, or I don't want to pay thousands of dollars, you know, to somebody to print up a book. I figure most people have either an iPhone, where you can get the Kindle app for iPhone, it won't read it to you. I was hoping it would read it to me because I'd love to have it read to me on my iPhone, but unfortunately it's on the Kindle app on my iPhone and I can read it, but it doesn't talk, whereas the Kindle, has got the Whisper Sync voice that talks to you, and that's really cool. So people can go to Amazon.com, and if they have Kindle Unlimited, they can read a copy for free, or if they don't have Kindle Unlimited, just, pop for the $9 and buy you one, and then you can lend it to your friends.
That's great. You don't sound you don't sound crazy at all to me. You sound really
well, thank you. I really like hearing that voice. I appreciate that.
But you're in the same club here, so I don't know.
Right.
The crazy
We're all
club.
Mickey Mouse. We're all Mickey Mouse, yeah.
Well, I console myself with the fact that back when people were seeing rocks fall from the sky, the mainstream scientific community scoffed at them and ridiculed them and told them they were crazy because that's impossible for stones to fall from the sky. And then they discovered meteorites. And I'm thinking that the UFO is going to be exactly that same thing. There's thousands and thousands of credible people, sometimes mass witnesses with radar confirmation. You can easily, through the literature and using your own mind, determine that this is something real and not something illusory. And so then what do you do with it? Once you know that there's a core, of course there's a lot of perceived natural phenomena. I've got a big, thick book about natural phenomena. That's one thing that if you're going to get into UFOs, you really need to know what they are not, And there's all these kind of double rainbows and sundogs and perihelias and stuff like that. You need to be familiar with that type of stuff because ever since people do the subject up on about this, as it turns out, it's a pizza ad or it's CGI, or Photoshop and CGI is kind of ruin things because you really can't tell if something is real or not real. You got to hang in there, like the Turkey UFO stuff. I hung in there with that and saw that it was being analyzed by several laboratories around the world, and they're all saying that it's a real object. There's something there. There's 4 actual beings. They're in constant motion. So you can figure these things out, which ones are real, but it takes work. I pity people in a way like Dr. Bruce Maccabee, optical physicist. And by the way, he has familial problems too. When he goes home at Christmas, I saw him on a YouTube video, and he said that when he talks to his friends and relatives, they think he's crazy too. And he's a naval optical physicist, so I don't feel too bad.
Right.
Yeah, he's on Facebook too, by the way, guys. He's on Facebook too.
Oh, good. I know what I'll be doing when I get off the phone. I'll be searching for Dr. Maccabee and talking to him.
Well, I've lost for a while there, I lost all my family and friends when I came out of the UFO closet. But eventually, they come around, they come back, and so that's okay. I'm fine with it. Let's see, we're almost out of time. We have less than 10 minutes. Is there anything else you'd want to tell our listeners about your information that really, you have a need to tell?
Well, there's one coworker of my best friend here in town that got a copy of my book, and she's reading it, and she told him that she had to stop because it was bothering her. And so I suggested that she goes right to the epilogue, because in the epilogue, I feel like the book, there are some dangers involved. I mean, when you get into subjects like cattle mutilation and occasional human mutilation and stuff, there's some rough stuff that's involved with the UFO material that's very bothersome to people. And it all goes into that category that we were talking about. I mean, there's good forces out there and bad forces out there that do some things that are kind of ghastly. And so I told her to go to the epilogue because I do end the book on a positive note. I want it to be ultimately hopeful that there is a society ahead for humanity, and that we'll come out of this thing, without destroying ourselves and without succumbing, to some of these forces that want to use us for our technology, and they don't care what happens to us after that. If the contraries at the friendship group actually exist, the biological robots that worship science, they'd have an interest in some of the technologies that we're going to produce for their own reasons, and even if it were harmful to humans. So hopefully we've got extraterrestrial friends that will help us through this transition and help us have the bright future that I think we will. And the thing that really gets me thinking that is going to happen is because in 2009, when those beings that I was close with here on Earth, some of which were still living in physical lives, which was really strange, one of the beings was me. It was actually a transcended version of myself. So I'm kind of sure that I'm around in the future, in some form or another. So anytime I get a little disturbed by some of the material that I come in contact with, I just remind myself that one of those people that drew close to me was myself. And I will live on in some other type of realm, and it's something I'm actually looking forward to. The one thing that came out of all that in 2009 is that I lost my fear of death. I still don't like pain, but as far as transitioning from this three-dimensional reality into the beyond, I'm not worried about that at all, because I kind of had a glimpse of myself back in 2009. It's almost like we've just got a
near-death experience. Yeah, you get a glimpse of yourself, and you go, "Oh, okay, so it's okay. I'm going to be here."
Yeah, and then you get into Kenneth Ring and the Omega Project, and that was kind of one of the first catalysts that got me going, that maybe there's a connection between NDEs and the UFO phenomena, because in the Omega Project, he describes how similar a near-death experience is to an abduction experience. And in the book, I tell of one particular experience in 1979 that I had with a friend of mine, in which it was an episode of missing time, and you just have to read the book to, get the details on that. That's a long story. But there was a big chunk of time missing. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning when it happened. Next thing I know, I'm pulling up in her driveway at night. And the cool thing about it was, at the time I was driving a green Toyota Tercel, and when I finally got a hold of her on Facebook after 30 years being disconnected from her, and she told me that I was driving a green Toyota Tercel, and I'm kind of a car guy. I have an emotional attachment to all the cars. I know every single car I've ever owned. I have absolutely no memory of owning that car. So I called my brother here in Indiana, and I said, "Do you remember a car, the Toyota?" And he goes, "Yeah, I remember that car." So I know it existed, but I have absolutely no memory of that car whatsoever.
Wow.
Just going from 1 o'clock in the morning till daytime. And she had a kind of an odd reaction to it. She felt a little violated and burnt her dress on the outdoor barbecue grill.
Wow.
And I didn't find this out until just, a couple of years ago when we reconnected on Facebook.
Oh, wow. I had an experience in 1979. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I had 1979 year was a UFO banner year for me as well. And I found out that the other person, which was my godfather, he talked about that event also, like the rest of his life. So, but yeah, there was a little, not necessarily missing time, just jumbled time. And it was almost like we got put back too early before the thing happened at the end. It's hard to explain. But, so yeah, yeah, well, okay, so where are you at in your integration process? I really found it amazing that, this is, kind of a first time for you, like a first radio interview for you.
Yeah, brand new. I was actually really quite nervous about it. I thought maybe it would help me if I rehearsed, but I tried to rehearse the details of my near-death experience, and I started crying in front of the mirror. And I said, I don't want that to happen. So I just forgot all about it, and I said, you'll do fine. Just talk to people. It's just like talking on the telephone to somebody.
Well, you sound like you've been doing it all your life. You sound like a pro. I see you on Coast to Coast. I mean, you're very good, very good. I was wondering what you do professionally.
I'm an occupational therapist.
Oh, that's right. You said that earlier. Yeah.
Long ago, at the time in 1979, during this missing time episode that I had, I was a salesman, and I reached a point where I felt like I was capable of interacting with humanity in a different sense than that. Not that there's anything wrong with the sales profession, but I was just tired of getting people's signatures. And plus, I was always on straight commission, so on Sunday night, I would always kind of fear the next week because, maybe I wouldn't sell anything. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could just have a profession where I could just immerse myself into the work itself and have a paycheck be a byproduct of that? And I wound up having a girlfriend at some point that was an occupational therapist, and I job shadowed her, and that stuck in my head until I was 39, I believe. So I entered college at the age of 39 with no education beyond high school, and I sat down with the financial advisor at the university, and they told me I was eligible for Pell Grant and all this kind of stuff. So I just went to school for 4 years, 2 years at IU in Bloomington, and then 2 years at IUPUI in Indianapolis. Graduated in 97 at the age of 42, and I've done it ever since. I've got one more year to retire. So I'm thinking that when I retire in July of 2017, maybe I can get out and do some of these UFO conventions. I'd love to meet Clifford Stone in person. And I'd just love to get out into the community and meet some of these people that have had, similar experiences or even more fantastic experiences, to talk to them face to face, because I sense that I can get a really good sense of a person if I'm looking at them face to face, and I see their eyes and I see their body gestures, and you can tell when you talk to Clifford Stone that he's just talking from the heart. What he tells you has happened to him is absolute gospel. I mean, he's not anything except genuine, and I'd like to meet more people. I'd like to meet him, plus more people like him that are in the field and maybe have written some books, and just sit down and talk to them. But you can't do that when you got the 9 to 5, so I'm hoping to retire and get out in the world.
Well, we could have Clifford on the show with you. At least you could meet him that way.
Well, that'd be cool.
So maybe we can make that happen. Let's see what we can do to make that happen. Because Clifford's a great guy. And
yeah, he really is.
I've had him on our show, and he's very, very sensitive and sweet. Oh, he was an amazing person to have on the show. I was just delighted to, be on with him for the 2 hours we were on. Me and Dr. Lesson were on with him. So he feels like we could have him back. Maybe Karen can help make that so.
Well, I just wanted to say too, you might lose some family members or whatever, but I feel like I've gained family too. I've met so many people who are weird in the same way as I am, like yourself and Janet. And it's like I felt like I've known people my whole life. We sit down and we open up, and I don't know how many times either I've said it or someone said to me that you're the first person I told this story to or whatever, because there's a family of experiencers out there, and we're finding each other.
It's really interesting that you should say that, because I was reading one of David Wilcock's books, either The Synchronicity Key or The Source Field Investigations, and he said if you stay in this long enough and you study about the phenomena will reach out and touch you in some fashion or another. And I feel like that's beginning to happen, not only with this interview, but also with my friends that I have in the world who have discovered through Facebook or whatever that I have this interest. They will tell me things that they have never told anybody, about experiences that they've had with a luminous phenomena that they've interacted with, or a non-human entity or whatever. And there's a fear there of being ridiculed and being told that you're crazy, that if they know you're receptive to it and you're not going to judge them for what they have to say to you, you'll find out some really interesting things, and you'll get some one-to-one, face-to-face personal stories coming at you that are very life-enriching and insightful.
I agree with that, definitely. And I would say, too, it's like when I've had those conversations, it's like putting a puzzle together with somebody. It's like sparks a memory in me or insight in myself. So it's why we're kind of hooked on having experiences like you on, because I know that when what you said is going to touch some people very, very deeply, because you were willing to stick your neck out and say it. So we're really thankful.
We're really appreciative. And we're almost out of time. So once again, how do people get your book? Russell,
Well, just go to Amazon.com. You can plug in my name, Russell Scott Brinegar, Brinegar, or just the title, Overlords of the Singularity. The subtitle is The Manipulation of Humankind by Hidden UFO Intelligences and the Quest for Transcendence. I added the Quest for Transcendence almost not as an afterthought, but somewhere midstream, because the manipulation of humankind by hidden UFO intelligences sounded a little negative. And I know other authors have put out books with potentially negative titles, like Jacques Vallée and Messengers of Deception, or John Keel, who I love, Operation Trojan Horse. But I didn't want to give people the impression that's all it was about. So the Quest for Transcendence is built into the fabric of this book to hopefully project a sense that through all of this weird phenomena, there is hope for us, that we can advance and we can evolve and we can, develop into something even more fantastic than we are right now. But yeah,
well,
it's
thank
only
you so much. We're going off air. Much love and blessings. We'll have you back again. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Farewell.
Nice talking to you.
Bye, Karen. Nice talking to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Exit music. Bye. There we go.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.